If you have booked an Alaska cruise or are thinking about booking one, we are talking Alaska cruise planning, so stick around. If you're like us, by the time we took our first Alaska cruise, we had already taken 18 Caribbean cruises, so we were by no means cruise newbies. But booking and planning an Alaska cruise is an animal all unto itself, which is the purpose of this video. We took a poll and about 45% of respondents said they were still thinking about booking an Alaska cruise. Now, 25% of respondents said they had already booked theirs. If you have already booked your Alaska cruise, you can skip forward in this video to the after booking section. If you haven't booked your cruise yet, then stick around because that's the first thing we're going to talk about. So for booking any cruise, quite frankly, here are several tips, but I'm going to be speaking specifically about Alaska cruises. So our number one tip is get a good travel agent. If you wonder who we use, I will link her information below. But travel agents can offer you some good sales deals that they find through their company or through the resources that they have. And they can also offer what we call onboard credits or OBCs. And that's always some fun extra money to get that you can spend in any way you want to on board, including excursions and drinks and food and anything like that. So it's always good to have a cruise certified travel agent also, because they can lead you through the process of booking as well as helping you decide amongst the cruise lines and what benefits and sales each of them might have. The second tip is to start choosing your date range. So you can base that on many different things. Your schedule at work and your kids or your own schedule in school. So you have to think about that. If the only months of the year or times of the year that you can travel is when you and or your kids are out of school, then that's going to limit your schedule in booking a cruise. Also, your cost. I mean, let's be honest, budget matters. We all have to be concerned with how much money we're spending on our vacations. So that's going to matter too. So look at your schedule and be sure and be able to tell your travel agent what times of the year that you can travel, because that will narrow it down. Also, what your budget is. That will help your travel agent send you quotes for cruises that are actually applicable and things that you can afford. Also, think about the weather during different parts of the year for an Alaska cruise. There is a difference between April through July and August and September when it comes to weather on an Alaskan cruise. If you're wanting potentially a little warmer weather or maybe not as much rain, you should consider April through July. If it doesn't really matter or that's all that your schedule will allow, August and September can sometimes be a little more rainy and a little colder. Now we move to choosing an itinerary. Obviously, your budget will help you narrow down your options for an itinerary. It also might be, are there specific ports that you want to see, that you've already done a little research online and you know, like for Juneau, for instance, I know we want to go to Juneau. So pay attention to the ports that particular itinerary is visiting. Also, the activities that you and your family or your party might want to be involved in matter which itinerary and which ports you visit. And I mentioned Juneau. For one, Juneau is good for whale watching. Sitka is good for whale watching too. So if whale watching, for instance, is an activity, and we'll talk about activities later on, so stay tuned. If that's an activity that you know you want to do, then pick a port in that itinerary that's going to be conducive to good whale watching. In booking your cruise, you will also, while you're booking, need to choose late or early dining time, or decide if you're going to have flexible or what some cruise lines call anytime dining. Keep in mind the length of time you will be in port. So if you've already decided on an itinerary and you're asking your travel, discussing or asking your travel agent to go ahead and book it, they will be asking you, what time dining do you want? Do you want early or do you want later? So you might look at some of the entertainment options on that itinerary, and especially how long you're going to be in each port, so you can determine if you want early or late dining, because you will need to choose that when your travel agent books your cruise. And one of the most important things in booking your cruise is choosing a cabin category. Now that's going to be based on your wants and your needs and your budget. We seem to always get back to that, don't we? Because most of us aren't independently wealthy. So keep those three things in mind: your wants, your needs, and your budget. If you really were going to Alaska, we have to have a balcony, then you're going to save particularly for a balcony cabin. Also think about your needs. If you have children or more than 2 adults traveling in your cabin, then you're going to need sleeping accommodations for 3 or more. So that would be according to your needs. Also, keep in mind if you have a handicapped or a less mobile member of your party or your family, to be sure and ask your travel agent for a mobility impaired cabin. All the cruise lines offer those too. Now that we have your cruise booked, we are moving on to the literal planning stages for your Alaska cruise. So welcome aboard if you're starting the video here, and thank you for hanging in with me through booking if you've watched the whole thing. So one of the first things to consider after you've booked your cruise is thinking about your excursions so that you can start getting those booked. Is there anyone in your party, or is there a reason for mobility limitations? So let me give you some examples. Maybe you have young children. Are you going to have a stroller with you on your excursions or while you're out and about outside the ship? What about wheelchairs, or someone who even is not quite in a wheelchair yet but has limited walking ability? Get all of that written down. Talk to everybody in your party about their mobility limitations, or think about your kids and how tired they're going to be, and if you're going to need to bring a stroller along. And be sure and consider that when you're thinking and looking at excursions. And we'll talk about this more in detail, but keep in mind that when you're looking at excursions, I'll give you some help on some resources online of where to get some ideas of what the excursions even are. Because again, we're talking about planning. Some of us don't even know where to start. The mobility descriptions under the excursion information will help you narrow down your potential excursions. And then number 2 is, of course, again, here we go with the budget. Set a budget for your excursions. That's going to be very important. And let me tell you, if you've cruised the Caribbean 1 or more times, you can get an easy beach day for, maybe $70 per person, sometimes even $50 per person. And sometimes that will even include drinks and food. I'm thinking about some of the beach resorts that we visit. Alaska is different. Just let me stop you and tell you, Alaska excursions are much more expensive. So if you have a budget, that's your cruise budget, this is what we budgeted for excursions, then that will help you actually narrow down your choices for the excursions. You also don't want to forget about your drink expenses on board, your specialty dining you might be booking. Again, we'll talk about that here in a minute, and your Wi-Fi expenses. So don't forget to work that into your budget when you're thinking about how much you're going to spend on excursions. So with those things already known, now decide what your party, your family is even interested in when it comes to excursions, right? So you may not even know where to start. So let's talk about, if you have no idea what the options even are for excursions, where do you go to kind of start looking and scrolling to see what the choices even are? All right, so you've got about 3 choices. You've got your cruise line website. The ship excursions will give you a general idea about what can we even do in Alaska? What's available? What are people offering? So your cruise line website is number 1. Number 2 is TripAdvisor. Now, we don't get any advertising income or anything off TripAdvisor. We have just found personally in our own travel experiences that's a very good resource, because you can look at non-agenda traveler reviews. They're not getting paid. They just went to this beach resort and they want to tell everyone else what a great day it was. Or they want to tell everyone else that the service wasn't very good and there are sand fleas. Those are just examples, right? So TripAdvisor has reviews from actual travelers, and anyone can go on and add a review. So include TripAdvisor when you're trying to investigate and figure out what excursions are even available and what you and yours might be interested in. Again, that will give you more of an overview. The third option for checking out what is available are third-party excursion websites, directly websites. Now, the vendors on TripAdvisor are third-party excursions. What that means is it's not a ship excursion. So you've got a ship excursion and then you've got third-party vendors, okay? Those are going to be the people who offer your excursions on TripAdvisor as well as individual travel or excursion websites. So let me give you some examples of those. I will also put the web links down below, okay? So you can check these out. AlaskaShoreExcursions.com. A second one is AlaskaShoreTours.com. And the third one is ProjectExpedition.com. So again, I will put those links in the description box below. We don't get any advertising or anything from these websites. They're just some good options that my travel agent has told me about, or that I think might be helpful just to let you get an idea of what the available excursions are. And along those lines, I'll give you some examples. So we already talked about whale watching. Whale watching is one of the very popular excursions. Then you have glacier viewing, and I'm telling you, there's a wide range of glacier viewing because it can be anything from sailing by a glacier on a small boat to being in a kayak and yourself sailing by and as close as you can get to a glacier. And then the very expensive end of the excursions are maybe you're in a helicopter and you literally land on a glacier. So when I say glacier viewing, inside that excursion category, there are several options. And then we have wildlife viewing. That's a category that someone can take you to potentially a wildlife reserve or literally in the wild so you can see bears and other Alaska wildlife. Let's see, sled dog and mush camp. One of my friends went to that this past summer with her husband and her child, and they loved it. You actually get to hold the sled dog puppies, and you get to see them in their working environment, what they eat and how they work. They really enjoyed that. Zip lining is available, not just in the Caribbean, but in Alaska as well. I mentioned the sea kayaks, and then there's things like the adventure carts or four-wheelers also, and going out into the Alaska rotunda. That's quite a word, huh? I don't even know if that's the right word. Out into the Alaska wilderness, right? On four-wheelers or in some kind of adventure cart. So those are some options. If you don't even know where to start and don't even know what excursions you want to do because you don't know what the options are, start with those options. Okay. Now another tip is then to book your excursions early. After you've researched, asked your family members, considered all your mobility issues with everyone who's there, also determining if everyone's going to travel together to that excursion, or some people, maybe they just want to stay on the ship, or maybe they just want to walk around the port, okay? So it takes some communication with everyone in your party to determine, maybe you do have a couple of older people in your party who are mobility impaired, but they just want to roll around or walk around the port. They don't want to go out into a boat and whale watch or go see the wildlife. So that will also help you limit your choices for excursions. So book excursions early as soon as you decide what those options are going to be. Depending on the size of the excursion group, like for instance, if it's whale watching, some of the whale watching excursions are on kind of large boats, and so they take maybe up to 30 people. And then you have more of like a family-owned business who has a smaller boat, and they might only take 10 or less people. So those smaller cruise excursion groups book up fast. Also, please, please, if you've cruised the Caribbean, you already know this. Check the cancellation policy. Especially if there are people in your party or your family who might have health problems, or maybe they have upcoming events or things going on that you're not sure about yet, but might lead to some kind of cancellation. You certainly don't want to be hung out to dry with getting your money back from an excursion that you're having to cancel. All of the ship excursions that I know of, the cruise lines that I'm familiar with, will allow you to cancel before your excursion. Like when you're on board, something happens on board or someone can't go, someone gets ill, you can go down to either the excursion desk or customer service and cancel your excursion and get your refund. But again, it's always safe to check the cruise line website. Also, if you're going to book a cruise excursion, to check on their cancellation policy. If you have found this video interesting or helpful, please smash that like button and hit subscribe for more tips about cruise and travel. We really appreciate it. So we have our cruise booked. We have narrowed down our excursions. Now you need to choose your dining, your drink, and your Wi-Fi packages if you're going to purchase them. So this is easy. If you just want to take advantage of the included eating options, which is the main dining room and the buffet, and often some like snack venues around the ship are also included. If you just want to take advantage of those, then you don't have to worry about a specialty dining package. Specialty dining, if you're new to cruising, are extra restaurants on board that are fee-based. So they're not included in your cruise fare alone. They cost extra to go eat there. They're usually things like specific kinds of food, like Italian food. Steak houses are usually always extra included specialty dining on board. So it's literally specialty dining. French, we ate at a French restaurant on Norwegian. We enjoyed that. So if you don't need specialty dining, right, then you're not going to need a dining package. If you don't drink alcohol or sodas, you're not going to need a drink package. Or if you just want to go drink by drink, you're just going to have 2 or 3 of those kinds of drinks a day, you can just pay as you go. I do have a drink package secrets revealed video for you that I will also link below that has a drink package calculator in it linked below that video. So you can figure out if you're going to drink enough to make it worth your cost to buy a drink package. So Wi-Fi's the same way. If you can literally cut off from the world and maybe just check some things while you're in port and you have a phone company package that allows you to do that in port when you're in Alaska. Again, remember, that's a US state. So if you're going to be able to check your phone messages or Facebook or whatever it is you're interested in, your email, while you're in an Alaskan port, then maybe you don't need Wi-Fi while you're on the ship. So consider that. This may not really even apply to you if you don't need any of those. Also keep in mind that if you're on a smaller ship, right, that just has maybe a couple of extra restaurant options for specialty dining. Like I know some of the Royal Caribbean ships just have maybe 2 extra, the steakhouse, maybe an Italian. Well, that might not be enough to purchase an entire, what they call unlimited dining package, right? You might not need that. So what that means is, 1, you might need to just say, I don't need a dining package at all, and move on to the drink package and the Wi-Fi considerations. 2, your other option is to look at the other kinds of dining packages. Some of the cruise lines have like a 2-night dining package. So it's not unlimited, but you get 2 meals at a specialty dining venue through your whole cruise. Or they'll have a 3-night dining package. Now, JJ and I have often bought the 3-night dining package because that kind of fits our needs. We don't necessarily want to go to specialty dining all week long, but we do want to have the option, and we do want to experience some of the specialty dining restaurants that are on board. So keep in mind, if you're on a smaller ship, it really might not be worth your money to get the unlimited dining package. So always consider not getting a package at all or getting one of those smaller packages. Additionally, we often get asked, and I see on the cruise forums all the time, people saying, is this a good price for the dining package? Should I buy now or should I wait? Or maybe they're talking about the drink package or the Wi-Fi package. This is the key, people. Warning, listen up, listen up. Go ahead and buy whatever package it is you're interested if you're comfortable at all at that price, okay? Because this is what happens. You can always track the price, and if it falls, you cancel that reservation and repurchase at the lower price. Anytime, you can always do that. So don't be scared or hesitant to go ahead and purchase because you can always cancel it and repurchase if the price drops. The risky part of that scenario is if you don't book and the price goes up, then you're in a mode of regret, wishing that you just would have bought it 2 months ago at the lower price. FYI, usually the cruise lines will have what they call sales, but the important thing to look at is the actual price per day per person for the package. They will have sales usually around holidays, right? Black Friday is a big one, sometimes Labor Day, Memorial Day. So if you're interested in keeping track of that price, remember, just go ahead and buy it because you can always cancel it. And then when Black Friday comes around, if it's a lower price, cancel that and repurchase at that sale price. If you buy a dining package of any kind, whether it's unlimited or a 2-night or a 3-night, something like that, if your cruise line offers that, you will likely not be able to make reservations online. You will have to wait and make reservations after you board, after your muster, and then you go to any restaurant on board and make your dining reservations for the week. However, if you just book one meal, let's say you're on a small ship and you're on maybe a 5-nighter and you just want one meal at the steak restaurant while you're on board, okay? So you just buy that one meal, you then can book your reservations and your dining time online. So it seems kind of odd. Just remember, if you buy a package, you have to wait until you get on board to book your dining time. If you buy one meal at a time, you can book your dining online. Something also to keep in mind is your hours in port. Alaska port times are longer. You might be in port until 7, 8 p.m. in the evening. So if you have an early dining time, like 5:30 or 6 dining time, well, you might still be in port during that time. Or maybe you're in port till right at 5 o'clock or 5:30 and you're tired and you're still in your bundled up clothes that you went in port in, and you don't really want to change, get dressed up, or go in jeans to the main dining room. That's a whole nother video. But be sure that you keep in mind how long you're going to be in port, because if you're in port, you might have other eating options. So we always like to experience the food in the ports, especially on Caribbean cruises when we're maybe in a different country or on an island. But that also involves Alaska too, because take us for instance, we live in Texas. We don't get that fresh, amazing seafood that you can get in Alaska. So several of the ports we eat in port to experience the local cuisine. So keep in mind, are you going to be in port longer? And don't make your reservations on those nights. Also, will you be eating maybe in the buffet? If you come in late and you're tired and you're maybe dripping from a whale watching excursion and all the ocean water coming up on you, you just might want to eat at the buffet. Also be sure and check with your cruise line if you can switch night by night from reserved dining time to the flexible dining location. Sometimes they're on a different deck depending on the ship you're on. Sometimes it's a different main dining room, and some cruise lines just won't let you switch between those. And those are the evenings that you just go to the buffet or you eat in port. However, if your cruise line does allow, then you may, even though you're in port till 6 p.m., 7 p.m., you can always come back on board, and then if you do want to go to the main dining room for that little step above the buffet food menu, then you still can. You just need to go to the flexible dining main dining room. Okay, so moving to the next step. About 30 to 45 days out from your sailing, potentially, depending on which cruise line you're on, activities on board will open up and you can schedule them and purchase them online. For example, Royal Caribbean and their ships that go to Alaska have what they call a North Star, right? And it's like this pod that hangs out over, it's on an arm and it hangs out over the ocean and across on the ship. That is an extra fee and you need to book it. Also things like even ice skating and bumper cars, and again, depending on which cruise line you're on, those activities will open up for reservations and purchase about 30 to 45 days out. So this is the time that you want to remember that and take a look online for those reservations. They do fill up fast, but keep in mind there are also usually slots available once you get on board. One, they save some slots for people once they get on board. But two, people also end up canceling even though they've booked before. So maybe when you went online to try to get a reservation, it was all booked and then they canceled before the cruising. You never know. So if you really have your heart set on doing a particular activity on board, make sure that once you get on board, that you go to that location and check, because some slots may have opened. Now to what we used to call the $50 million question, right? What to pack for Alaska. Now this is a video all in itself, but I at least wanted to include it in this planning video as well, because it's part of planning for your Alaska cruise, okay? So I've done several videos on Alaska packing. One is called like a what I packed versus what I wore. There's another one that we did in leading up to our Alaska cruise with some clothing and some things with all the product links below. So I will link those packing for Alaska videos below, so you can go check those out. But let's talk about just some general ideas for what to pack for Alaska. Remember that time of year matters. So like we talked about way back in the beginning of the video when we were talking about time of year you're going to book and the difference in weather. So just go to a general weather online site like weather.com and look at the general typical weather for that month in Alaska, right? So you can see generally what is the Alaska weather in July the past 10 years. You know, they'll give you the generalities. So that will give you some general ideas of what to pack. The second tip is no matter what time of year you go, the number one rule is pack for layers, okay? So if it ends up being warm and sunny one day when you checked on weather.com and it's usually rainy in late August, and so I brought lots of clothes. Well, if you bring layers, then it's sunny that day. You can always take the layers off and you're great. Put your big coat in your backpack and you'll be fine. So remember that tip to dress, pack layers so that you're always prepared if your weather goes off track compared to what you expected. Okay, the other tip I want to give you is about waterproof footwear. Okay, so there's kind of a debate on this online. I'll just tell you, I brought a taller pair of boots, which you'll see in the videos that I'll link below. A taller pair of boots that were literally winter boots that I wore in New York City when we visited a couple of times. They're extremely warm, they're waterproof, 100%. Okay, you may not need full-blown winter boots. However, if you don't want to buy a tall winter boot, I would still highly suggest that you at least buy an ankle boot that is water resistant or even waterproof. This is why. We have all walked through rain or puddles in tennis shoes. Even when they're Scotch-guarded tennis shoes, it's the large potential that you're going to get water, especially when it's just raining. The bottom of your pants, maybe all over your pants, the inside your shoes, you're gonna have wet socks, you're gonna be walking mushy, and you think, I Scotch-guarded my tennis shoes, what's wrong? Well, it's literally raining and or you're walking through puddles. So that's why I recommend at least an ankle boot that's at least water resistant, if not waterproof. There really are a lot of things to think about when you are packing for an Alaska cruise or any cruise. So if you're curious about cruise gear items you can take on your next cruise, check out this video right here for tips of what to take on your next cruise. And if you're interested in our Alaska vlogs, you can look at this playlist here for all of our Alaska videos. Thanks for stopping by and be blessed.